So let's talk about Genesis chapter 5. And there are 5 interesting things that I want to talk about in this chapter. And then I'm going to add another one of my own. So we're going to talk about 6 things. Obviously, we're going to talk about Adam's children, including the one who disappeared. So the chapter opens by telling us about Adam's genealogy, or Adam's family tree. The first interesting thing that I see in this chapter is that even though Cain was Adam's and Eve's first son, he is cut off completely from the family tree. And as we talked about in the previous program, we talked about Cain being a bad dude, being a bad person. And that's the reason why he was casted out of the land. He became a fugitive and a wanderer, and also gets cut off from the family tree. Second interesting thing is that Seth takes Cain's place in the genealogy or the family tree. So when the chapter opens, talk about Adam and Eve and then having a son, and it does not mention Cain, it doesn't mention Abel, obviously, because he died. He was killed by his brother, but mentions Seth. So, and even though we know a lot about Cain and Abel, and we know about Seth, the third thing that I want to mention about this chapter is that Adam and Eve had other children. Just because they're not mentioned by name, obviously it's obvious that they have many other sons and many other daughters. And also in that chapter mentions that Adam died when he was 930 years old. And I'm going to real quickly mention the children or the family that is mentioned in this chapter. You know, his son, his grandson, and so forth and so on. So it talks about Adam having Seth, and Seth had Enosh. Enosh had Kenan, and Kenan had Mahalalel, and then he had Jared, and then he had Jared had Enoch, and Enoch begat Methuselah. And Methuselah had Lamech, and obviously Lamech had Noah. So this chapter talks to us about from Adam all the way to Noah. The fourth interesting thing that I want to mention about this chapter is that Enoch, the Bible says, walked with God. So he had a very close relationship with God, and because he walked with God, God took him. So he did not die, he disappeared because God took him. And if you want to know a little bit more about Enoch, there are history books, and if you didn't know this, and even though many Christians disagree, Enoch also wrote a book, the book of Enoch, and in that book he talks about the condition of the earth at that time, and talk about the watchers, and I may mention something about the watchers in the next chapter. Like I said, not many Christians believe that this is a real book, but even Jude in the Bible mentioned this a verse from this book. And if you read things like history books, like I do sometimes, you'll find out that he also wrote a book, whether you believe it or not. But it's an interesting book. If you have time, you should read it. The fifth thing that I want to mention that is interesting in this chapter is that Methuselah lived 969 years. So he is the oldest dude that we know, that, you know, in history, that is the oldest guy. He lived 969 years old. And I said I was going to talk about a sixth thing, and it's that in average, this man lived around 900 years. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it all depends. Some people might say, yeah, I would love to live to be 1,000 years. Some people may say no. Anyways, I don't think God thought for this to be a good thing, because the corruption and people and men and humanity, God's children, they were so bad at that time, and things were so horrible. I don't think God thought this to be a good thing. And you're going to see that in the next chapter, when God decides to send a flood and ask Noah to build an ark.